It's for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank all the witnesses for their excellent presentations today. I have questions for everyone, but I don't have enough time, so I'm going to start with Mr. Strickland. Mr. Strickland, thank you so much for being here today. Thanks for your excellent recommendations. I do have them in front of me. And thanks so much for your leadership within the building trades union and movement within our country. You've been an excellent leader, and I really appreciated all our previous conversations. The first question I have is not something you've mentioned, but it's something we've talked about. We have a number of non-status workers that are working in building trades union across the country. What do you think about, is it time for us to find a way to normalize the non-status workers that's been here for years, that have already been trained, that contribute to our economy already? What is your position?
Well, thank you very much for the question, MP Dzerowicz. Absolutely, building trades support normalization of people who are working on our construction sites who aren't Canadian citizens. And I think we need to provide a pathway to Canadian citizenship. There's a pilot project that many of our affiliates have been working on through Department of Immigration, and that's had some really good results. We'd like to continue that work and provide pathways for more citizenship for workers on construction sites who can continue to provide good value to the Canadian economy.
And my next question is, part of the reason why we haven't had sort of enough skilled workers, in my opinion, come through our immigration system is because the language levels have been too high, as well as the education requirements have been kind of a disconnect with maybe requirements, maybe some of the skilled or semi-skilled workers we need. If we created some sort of a clear pathway where we adjusted those requirements for skilled and semi-skilled workers, do you think it'll help address some of the labor shortages within the construction or the building trade unions across the country?
Well, absolutely. It's a construction worker won't qualify to immigrate to Canada right now under the current requirements for immigration. So that needs to change. Recognizing that we have shortages in some areas and pockets of high unemployment in others, we need to look at all kinds of different ways in order to get more people in the construction industry. We have to introduce it earlier in our grade schools. We have to provide mobility supports. We have to bring more immigrants into Canada. And we also have to provide pathways for those people who are already working in the construction industry. So it's got to be a multifaceted approach in order for us to continue to build this country.
And then my next question, and you're sort of touching a little bit into it, there's a lot of sort of red tape sometimes between the provinces in terms of the mobility of our workers. Is there any recommendation you have around maybe some interprovincial trade barriers that might come down, or harmonizing of some of the regulations that might actually facilitate the movement of workers across the country to where they need to go? Would you have a recommendation or two for that?
Well, there's been the interprovincial ministry objectives and work done on removing those kind of interprovincial trade barriers for recognition of different qualifications among tradespeople across provincial barriers. There's a Red Seal working group, which has all those ministerial folks on board that are looking at those kinds of issues. So I think more work needs to be done there. But we need more flexibility amongst provinces in order to recognize qualifications in one province versus qualifications in another. The Red Seal program helps with that. But overall, MPA, Dzerowicz, it's a great question. We need to have all these kinds of different tools to encourage this mobility. We've also looked at mobility, binational mobility, getting more workers from U.S. into Canada, more workers from Canada into the U.S. We've looked at recommendations around temporary foreign workers, where unions could be designated as potential employers so they could control and manage that temporary foreign worker program a little bit better than maybe private sector interests could. So there's a whole series of recommendations and initiatives, provincially, internationally, binationally, that could be done to improve the number of tradespeople within Canada.
And maybe just my last sort of 10 seconds that I have, if I could just ask you, Mr. Strickland, in terms of the top 2 or 3 sort of restrictions within Canada that you think we should be focused on beyond the red seals that you talked about? I'd be grateful if you could maybe send a recommendation over to our committee for our consideration.
I'd be happy to take a more comprehensive view of that.